Brothers and sisters, hello and welcome. We're here at St Michael and All Angels, Lancing. I'm Father Felix Smith, I'm the vicar here at St Michael's. We're a large village, we're actually the largest village in England, so they say, of around 20,000 people here, and we're Anglo-Catholic, traditional Anglo-Catholic parish, and we've enjoyed having with us Father Thomas Fink-Jensen, who's been our deacon here, the curate, over the last year, and who will be priested in the coming weeks and months. So Father Thomas is going to introduce himself to you now.
Hi, I'm Father Thomas. Really nice of you to join me on this sunny morning. I hope the sun doesn't bother you from behind. I'm weird. I was born in Denmark 34 years ago. I grew up mainly in the Netherlands from a Danish father and a Dutch mother. And I'm the oldest of 7 children, and it was a very happy household I grew up in. And we were Christians. We went to church usually twice on a Sunday, often on a Wednesday as well, as much as we could pretty much. And we went all over the place, not because we didn't believe anything in particular, but believe very much that the church is one. And so I was baptized in the Lutheran Church of Denmark. We grew up mainly going to Reformed churches, which is the church in the part of the Netherlands I grew up in. But also for a while worshipped at a Roman Catholic monastery on Sundays, went to Mass there, though my parents didn't receive. And when I was a student, I went to all local church denominations in the city of Amersfoort where I lived. There were 33 of them, loved them all, from Indonesian Pentecostal to Russian Orthodox. And I ended up worshipping at the Anglican Church of England chaplaincy in Utrecht, which was a lovely place because I've always loved about the Church of England its recognition that it is part of that one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And so it happened that when I worked as a primary school teacher, which I loved very much, and I started thinking in earnest about my vocation to ordained ministry, something I'd been aware of all my life. The oldest thing I can remember is telling my teacher I was going to be a priest one day, which must have shocked her coming from a Reformed tradition. But so I explored my vocation by looking into it in the Church of England, thinking it would come to nothing. And instead, a couple of years later, 6 years later, I find myself preparing for a priestly ordination. I moved to Oxford, worked at Pusey House and lived at Pusey House in Oxford. Did a lot of wonderful work there with Father George and Father Mark and the team there. Knew nothing about High Church Anglicanism, learned a lot. I trained at Wycliffe Hall after another year at St Barnabas in Oxford, and I find myself in Lancing, of all places, a place I'd never heard of before. What the future holds, who knows, somewhere, wherever the Lord may lead me.
So Father, obviously this has been a very difficult time for the church locally here, our community, and of course the church across the country. But what do you think has been the greatest challenge that we've faced over the last few months as we've been trying to reach out to our community and keep our worship going?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I suppose the answer is different for each person, isn't it? Everybody has had different challenges. I think a couple of things come out for me. I'm a trustee of the local food bank. There's a lot of intake for that, which is very sad and very good at the same time. We're involved in that at St Michael's, and many from us are volunteering for the Something in Lancing Church's food bank, which is great. Same with Space at the Table, providing meals for families over the holidays, which is taking place in a different form now, which is also great. And I think not receiving the sacrament has been a real challenge for myself personally, and my family, as well as many people here, and it's a real joy to be back at church now that we're allowed to, and a continued source of joy really, to see how that sacramental life will unfold in the future. And a final thing I would say is when in the beginning we leafleted the whole parish and the neighbouring vacant parish when the pandemic started, the lockdown started, and 20,000 people or so. And we had a lot of calls, I would say, the first few weeks, wouldn't you, Father, that people needed help shopping or needed help picking up their medication or such practical things which we've been privileged to help out with. But then I think after a month or so, the conversations really started changing, and a lot of people have been calling since and continue to do so about being lonely, being isolated, and needing just a regular check-up, nothing special perhaps. And so our electoral roll, everybody has been calling each other regularly, which has been wonderful. And I think that will continue in the coming months and years, where people are very, very isolated, and who knows how to go ahead when you're single and you've not even been touching, never mind seeing, a single living person for months in a row. What that does to us, I mean, those are some huge challenges facing us at this time. And yet I sincerely and truly believe that we, with the gospel of Christ, have something to say and to speak hope into those situations at the same time.
So one thing that we've been really pleased about here is that people have been watching our services online during the lockdown, and then some of those have come to church for the first time sometimes, or sometimes come back to church after a long period of time away as we've started those services again. Does that give you a sense of hope perhaps for the future here of the church at Lancing? But perhaps that's something that's happening across the country as well. I wonder what you thought about that.
Yes, there is a lot of hope in that. One of the things I found really terrifying before being ordained a deacon was taking funerals, and I was quite shaky doing the first ones, but it's been a real privilege standing beside people. And one of the things I've been really surprised with is the number of people here at St. Michael's who've kept coming to church, whereas they might not have done so before after they had the funeral of a loved one. And I for me, thinking about that and thinking about the lockdown and the real sadness and trouble that causes in so many of us at this time, if it is really true that when we are weak, God is strong, then there must be a lot of hope for the church, not because we're going to be a mighty institution and flourishing financially and being great and powerful, but because we are not going to be any of those things most likely. But then God is strong at that time. It's a very pious answer. What it looks like, I really know very little about, but I am really curious to see what it is the Lord will do in the midst of our weakness and our frailty, because that is often when we draw closer to Him, and that seems very good to me.
So, Father, as you come to approach your priesting in a little while, how can we as a community here at Lancing, but also across the diocese, those who might be watching this from other places, how can they be praying for you and for our church as we come to that special time?
I always feel under pressure when asked what to pray for. I feel like I must give the right pious answer, especially when wearing this. But so many things. Pray for my family, that it will be a joyful time for them, that the two children are very young, 6 months and 2 years, and that they behave during the service so that my wife can enjoy the service. But pray, I suppose, especially for us here at St. Michael's and for the time ahead, which is so uncertain, that we may know how to serve people best at this time. People who come to church or would love to come to church but can't at this time, and those who would not call themselves churchgoers but by the grace of God might. So, yeah, some things I hope pious enough for you to pray for.